let's start with the refuge and cultivating bodhicitta. I'll do twice in the English and then once in the English. Actually, we'll do two in the English and once in the Tibetan. I go for refuge, the three jewels and the three roots, the sources of refuge. In order to establish all beings in Buddhahood, I generate a mind of supreme awakening. I go for refuge of the three jewels and the three roots, the sources of refuge. In order to establish all beings in Buddhahood, I generate a mind of supreme awakening. Kunchok sungdang sawasum, chapne namla chapsuchi, drokan sanje lago chir jangjuk chokdu sem kedo. All right. So should we go over you sent me a couple of questions. The person who asked that question, I guess, is not here.
Yeah, the ones, but the question about, well, I can't remember, the seven-headed cobra, was that one of the questions that we had?
Yeah, there was, we're talking about the life of Buddha, that as a child, he was seated under a shade tree and the shade never left him. No matter where the sun went, he was still under the shade. And
right.
I remember seeing rupas of the Buddha and a seven-headed cobra shading him.
Yes. Yeah, you often see that protecting the Buddha when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree before his enlightenment. So yeah, that's a snake-like being that protected the Buddha from the elements after his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. And it's Mukhalinda, I think, is the Naga, that it's a Naga snake-like being who protected Gautama Buddha from the elements after his enlightenment and encircled the Buddha's body the 7 times with his coils and stood with his hood spread over him. So often you'll see that in artwork. The first existing artwork, that image is from the 2nd century BC. But in Buddhism, the seven-headed cobra is associated with that Naga, and who protected the Buddha. There's according to the Mukhalinda, I looked it up because I wanted to make sure about it. The 6 weeks, and what I read was that 6 weeks after the Buddha began meditating under the Bodhi tree, a great storm arose, and this Naga Mukhalinda emerged from beneath the earth and used his hood to shield the Buddha from the rain. And the imagery, is multiple heads, often 7, is the prevalent in Buddhist art, symbolizing protection and reverence for the Buddha. And the depiction of Buddha meditating under the protection of Mukhalinda is common in Southeast Asian Buddhist art. You'll often see it, represented in Thailand and Cambodia in particular. So that's generally how we look at it in Buddhist iconography, depicting the protector and symbolizing the safeguarding of the spiritual teachings as well. And the other question that came up,
before you go into the other question, so does this why it's common to to make offerings to the Nagas during storms or before storms, or to protect?
The Nagas were the keeper of lots of the sutras, and they were protectors of the Dharma. And just like they protected him from the storm, the story is a significant part of Buddhist mythology about the Nagas symbolizing protection and reverence for the Buddha and his teachings. So, Nagas are generally water creatures, as you know, and so they often depicted in Buddhist art, highlighting again the Buddha's and protective nature, also of spiritual wisdom. So often it has to do with karma as well, referring to the law of moral causation. So where actions have consequences, that affects one's future. While Mukalinda does not directly relate to karma, it embodies themes of protection and support for spiritual practice, which can indirectly influence one's karma by fostering an environment conducive to enlightenment and virtuous action. So the Naga's protective act, they're seen as protectors of the Dharma, and in this case, protector of the Buddha himself, as a representative of the Dharma. So it's kind of a metaphor for the supportive conditions that help practitioners maintain their path toward spiritual growth and ultimately liberation. So yeah, the Nagas, of course, as we were saying, they're associated with water and the natural world, and the interconnectedness of all beings. The fundamental principle of Buddhism being encouraging compassion and mindfulness of one's actions and thoughts. So that is also represented by the seven-headed cobra.
Thank you, Lama.
Yeah. Okay. And I think you're probably familiar, with the other question was about the what was it? The worldly concerns. Yeah, the worldly dharmas. That refers to 4 pairs of attachments and aversions that bind individuals to the cycle of suffering, to samsara, and those being pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and criticism, fame and disgrace. So pleasure and pain, the desire, for physical comfort and mental happiness, and the aversion to discomfort and unhappiness. And gain and loss, it's obvious, the pursuit of material wealth and prosperity and the fear of losing them. And praise and blame, or praise and criticism, craving positive feedback and the fear of being criticized. And fame, again, and disgrace, the desire for a good reputation and the fear of being disgraced and dishonored. So these concerns are considered impermanent and transient, and they can lead to suffering if one becomes overly attached to them. And the teachings encourage practitioners to develop equanimity, and recognize the impermanence of these worldly conditions. So thereby reducing their influence on one's life and advancing the path to enlightenment, and not being overwhelmed by those 2 dualities, or those dualities. Those are called the 8 worldly concerns, or 8 worldly dharmas. So obviously it impacts our mental well-being by creating a cycle of attachment and aversion that leads to stress and anxiety and dissatisfaction. So these concerns are divided into those 4 pairs. And they represent the desires and fears that drive much of human behavior. Any other questions about those things?
No. We were actually just getting into or finishing up the initial chapter about Mahamudra in Charlie Rinpoche's book, Essence of Buddhism.
Mhm.
And it's funny because a lot of the book, at least the latter half of the book, I felt I was playing catch up to some of his philosophy a little bit. It's stuff that I had heard,
Yeah.
but crammed a lot in a very short space. But then we came to this Mahamudra explanation, and it was very well, very well put. It's really good read once we got to the
Yeah, he's such a good writer, and he really explains things, I think, very well. I really like his writing. Yeah, when it comes to karma, his book on karma is very good too. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the students that was here has a nursing background. And when he used the term non-differentiated, she instantly thought of non-differentiated cells, stem
Yeah.
cells, that have the, or nothing, but they have the potential to be anything or everything. And for
Yeah.
her, it kind of and made a connection for her.
Yeah. It could be anything. You're right. It's what the body needs. Was there anything else that came up? Mahamudra, of course, is a vast subject. That is the quintessential teaching of the Buddha when it comes to that.
Yeah, I did. It's from the quote from the book was, from a Buddhist point of view, there is nothing basically wrong with having the desire to have a good family, to want to look after our children, to want to have a good relationship, to want to have a good partner in life, to want to get a good job, or even want to keep your job. The problem arises when those desires become exaggerated.
Yes.
As
Yeah.
somebody
Mhm.
as somebody who plays with words, desire to have a home, desire to have a wife, instantly to me means attachment. If you
That's
have desire, you have attachment.
Well,
Like
good attachment. I mean, that's why we study the Dharma. We're attached to it, attaining of Buddhahood. So, I mean, attachment may not be the, I mean, this is the desire realm. We have desires, but there are some desires that are better than others, that's for sure. But when it comes to the Dharma, to aspire, to Buddhahood, if you call that desire, that is not such a bad thing.
I was looking for either like diligence or dedication and devotion, just being somewhat neurodivergent. Certain words just have a certain meaning to me, and I don't see a way around that word is concrete. That word means that word.
well, I guess how do you get to diligence, or how do you get to devotion? Where do you start from?
Devotion, just for me, devotion to the lineage was just automatic. I didn't have to desire it. It was just there.
But what brought you in the door? I mean, I guess what brought you in the door to even know there was a lineage? I guess that was not even a desire for freedom for the suffering I was in. I just knew that I was hurting, and someone said, "Hey, don't you know there's a Buddhist center near where you live?" Mhm.
And that I knew the fundamentals intellectually of Buddhism, but I just hadn't put it into practice.
So instead of desiring, you wanted to stop hurting, basically.
Yeah, it wasn't a
You
desire
wanted
for anything. If it was a desire, it was a desire to cease my suffering.
or maybe a want, instead of
Yeah.
using the word desire, you wanted to stop.
But once I sat down and honestly, once I met Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche for the first time, there was no doubt that it was devotion and dedication. I didn't have to have a desire for it. I didn't have to work for it. It was spontaneous.
Well, that is your merit. That is your good karma, that was spontaneous, and it just happened as a result of your karmic causes and conditions. So it's not always like that for a lot of people, but it is certainly true that when it's like that, that is a great blessing.
Well, and that leads to a good question, Lama. How do we encourage students that do have a more difficult time, that it doesn't come instantaneously? For them, it's a struggle to make.
Well, that's why we do Nundro, so we begin with Nundro with prostrations, for devotion and for it is all to cultivate merit and to guide us on the path initially. So and then we do the Vajrasattva, to purify our negative karma, and then we do the mandala to develop that merit. That's why we do preliminary practice. So we would encourage, once a person comes onto the path, then we do the foundation exercises, the first of which is the ordinary foundations, the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. So you begin to cultivate that kind of view, the right attitude, and then, you develop that. And of course, we're talking about the Vajrayana, so it does require some connection to a teacher to guide the student along the way. It's hard to do it on your own without any guidance or without any path, so there is a progression. So we follow that path, that so we talk about the Hinayana path, we talk about the Mahayana path, we talk about the Vajrayana path. So that is part of the Vajrayana, and not everyone really is keyed into that. A lot of people, the Buddha taught so many different ways for all of the different mindsets. So how do you do it? You really can't do it. You can make presentations, and the student is going to resonate, if they're in alignment with that, then they're going to progress quickly. But we have a lot of obstacles, obscurations, and things that create obstacles for us. So we have to remove those. That's why we do the Nundro practice. So, we started talking about Mahamudra, and, Mahamudra meditation originated in the Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions of Buddhism. And it is the practice that aims to help practitioners achieve the state of perfect enlightenment or realization, ultimate nature of the mind, our Buddha nature. So we have to understand Buddha nature. The word Mahamudra is derived from the Sanskrit, as you know. It could be translated as great seal or great symbol, and it is a term used to describe the ultimate nature of reality beyond concepts and words and any duality. But it takes a little while to really understand that. So, it is the direct realization of the nature of one's mind to attain perfect awakening. And we have not been trained in that. You just don't start off with that generally. This is done through the practice of shamatha. First, you have to tame the mind, and vipassana, insight that can come with that, leading to Mahamudra, which is the absorption in the natural state of the mind. So one of the key aspects of Mahamudra meditation is the recognition of the nature of mind as being essentially pure, unchanging, regardless of the content of one's thoughts or experiences. So this recognition leads, to a profound sense of inner peace and freedom from suffering. So how do you do that? By directing them in that way. That's how that's done.
So really, a big part is everyone's karma. And
that certainly is true. Yeah. And their natural inclinations or lack thereof, and going through the process of purification. And it's hard for Westerners, they have a hard time doing the prostration. I'm not bowing to anybody. I don't want to be part of this cult or whatever the thing is. And getting over that is not easy for a lot of people. And to establish a strong foundation takes time.
And then it comes back, I think to my own desire to want, when you find something precious, to want to share it, and for people to see that what is it, the iron and the ore.
Well, that is the bodhisattva attitude. We suffer because of our own views, because of our clinging, and it's self created. And when you see that how people create suffering for themselves, yes, you have some compassion for that, and you want to help them see, the truth. So absolutely right. That there's nothing wrong with that, Mike. Yeah. That is the bodhisattva path. That for all beings who suffer, and anyone who is not awakened to their true Buddha nature is suffering. They get attached to this, that, or the next thing. And it is our own doing. It has nothing to do with the outside. It's our interpretation and what we do with that experience that we have. And it's all about having the experience and transcending our clinging and our attachments and all those things. And it comes to a point where you see the truth. That's the nature of the mind, is just clear awareness. You see it without judgment and without prejudice or bias. But that doesn't happen overnight, does it? So yes, those are all good things to contemplate.
Thank you.
I suppose it's somewhat ego-driven that for those of us who've found this as a wonderful path, and we do our best to progress along it, and we see someone who comes to the center, sometimes for a period of years, and they just don't seem to be getting it. It's like, why not? Why aren't you getting this yet? What can we do to get it?
Yeah, that requires patience and loving kindness. I often use the example of training a puppy, and it's not easy. Why aren't you sitting when I say stay? And it takes a while, to be able to do that. But this is a mind training, and everyone can do it because we all have Buddha nature. But some people are more inclined to do it. They have more drive and motivation that comes to them easier because of causes and conditions and the merit that's ripening for them. So it is like that. So again, we can't be too impatient. We must have some forbearance and know that everyone is on the path, and at their own pace. Hopefully sooner or later they will get it, and you're going to be there to help them when they decide that they're ready to do that. So as I say, you can lead the horse to water, but that is the beauty of our system, is that there is a path. And if you follow the path, the result is guaranteed. But until you see the truth of that, and have the discipline and motivation to follow the path, as I always say, there's two problems with practice. The first is not starting, and the second is not finishing. So we have to, that's up to each one of us. If the Buddha could do it for us, he would, but no one can do it for us. So we have all of our own causes and conditions. Some are beneficial and some are not so much.
So Lama, you ready for a slightly more advanced question? Yet it was in our intro to philosophy book.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll see. Okay.
Okay, so in Essence of Buddhism, Tralag Rinpoche talked about mystic heat yoga.
Yeah.
And this idea of transforming sexuality into spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And taking talked a lot about this idea of the reversal of sexual energy and producing great bliss.
Yeah.
And this idea of bliss, just in general, not in just this teaching on the 6 yogas of Naropa. And maybe it's just my view of bliss kind of being habit forming or attachment. How should we view bliss in the Buddhist perspective? How do we use bliss? Because sometimes I guess we're meditating, but we're not trying to become in a blissed out state. But we are trying to be happy at the same time.
Yeah, it has to do with your motivation. Once again, I mean, the Shravakas or Pratyeka Buddhas, I mean, they're very disciplined, and their goal is to get out of samsara and to have that bliss of nirvana. And they're satisfied with doing that. But that is not the goal. The goal is to develop loving kindness and compassion for the benefit of all beings. And you can get lost in that idea of just experiencing your own bliss. And that is a trap, and it can happen.
So is it something on a relative level that kind of working with bliss and the correct motivation can be beneficial in the short term, but not in the grand scheme of things?
Well, it's going to be beneficial, but it has its limitation in terms of the bliss itself. I mean, it's a natural consequence of experiencing your Buddha nature, and you will arrive at that. But if you just rest in that, you can do that for extended periods of time until a Buddha or Bodhisattva taps you on the shoulder and says, you haven't achieved the highest level yet. Now you have to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, loving kindness, and compassion. So it can be a trap. It is a stage, and it can be one that is, it can be a goal, as it is, in the so-called Hinayana, or the foundation vehicle, to escape suffering and to attain nirvana, which is that kind of bliss that you're talking about. But it can really also be a kind of a limbo state of that bliss, where you just rest in that, and you can be in it for a long, long time and waste much time and not developing the higher states that we would say, in the Mahayana or Vajrayana. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think, because I think the way that I've always been taught, I felt that bliss was never the goal or the end stage, but I never really focused on it as being a method.
Well, there is a method, that these dropsies, it is a part of the method of the 6 yogas ultimately. So that's part of our Mahamudra lineage, Mahamudra meditation, the profound practice that is associated with our Karma Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. It is, that is the ultimate nature of reality and the mind, our Buddha nature, and is considered one of the most advanced and direct methods to realize the nature of the mind and achieve enlightenment. So it is the direct experience. That bliss is the direct experience of mind's nature, free from conceptual elaboration, a non-dual state of innate purity, clarity, and emptiness of mind. So we call it Dharmakaya Mahamudra. That is the essence, the very awareness that goes beyond samsara and nirvana. So it's not just samsara, it's not just nirvana. It's the very awareness that goes beyond samsara and nirvana. Without hope and fear, we rest, relaxed, and at ease, and this is Buddhahood. So this practice often involves, we say a close relationship with a qualified teacher who can provide guidance and instruction so we don't get stuck along the path. So, we talk about pointing out instructions. The teacher may provide direct pointing out instructions of what it is and what it's not to help the practitioner recognize nature of mind beyond conceptual thinking. And we use shamatha, to cultivate the concentration through shamatha meditation to stabilize the mind and develop clarity. And then we use insight meditation to help the practitioner investigate, the nature of the mind more completely, and this phenomena leading to a deeper understanding and the absorption in the ultimate nature of mind. That's samadhi. But it is not for the purpose of just resting individually, in some blissful state. So, we also talk about non-meditation. Mahamudra practitioners are encouraged to recognize the nature of their mind in all activities, and they're active in the world. We have relative bodhicitta, and we've got ultimate bodhicitta, active bodhicitta. So this includes integrating the practice into daily life. It's like wanting to go somewhere, and you have the ambition, you have the intention, you have the motivation to take a trip somewhere, but that doesn't happen until you actively get on the path, get the active action of going. So it's a powerful path of enlightenment, emphasizing the direct experience and action over just intellectual understanding. And it's usually the practice by advanced practitioners, again, under the guidance of the experienced teacher, due to its, subtle and profound aspects. So we're developing wisdom, by learning how to observe our own mind. And in so doing, we can decrease negative mind states and develop positive mind states. To develop wisdom and insight, we need a calm, clear, and concentrated mind. So it's more at ease. It's more a neutral, equanimity. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the problem is when we start talking about the Mahamudra and going beyond duality, is that everything we talk about, because
It's not that.
we have to use duality to talk about it.
Yeah,
So
anything we say about it is not it. That's exactly right. So it's beyond cognition. I mean, we can't really fathom it. That's why we say it's a direct experience. And not an intellectual understanding. Absolutely right.
back to the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao.
The true Tao. Yes, precisely right.
We were also talking about, and this is something that kind of I think about often. There's a quote in here that says Western psychology has this idea of building up the ego, where as Buddhism teaches how to break down the ego, but Buddhism also talks about building up self-confidence and feelings of self-worth. And it's such a strange time to be alive with so many things that are building up ego attachment. It's almost like the entire internet has become a place to get more attached to the self.
Oh, absolutely. You're being sold stuff all the time, and this is the desire realm, and it just feeds that desire, and it's never ending. One thing we may quell one desire, only to find that there's just another one right around the corner, and it's never ending. So we need to be able to develop that calmness of mind without being pushed and pulled, we were just talking about the 8 worldly desires, all of those things. to place our attention where we want it, and thoughts and emotions will still arise, but we won't be distracted by all those things that we see and hear. We're generally blown like a leaf in the wind, with all of these different things. But Buddhism is a supreme psychology, when we talk about psychology. If we're able to clear the mind, and we will experience a state of stability and tranquility, a peaceful mind, without being pushed and pulled by all of those things that we've been taught, from day one. It's not easy to get rid of all of those beliefs and structures that are well ingrained, and to be able to see them and uproot them. Again, the Buddhist teaching is about cultivating virtue, about avoid wrongdoing, and taming our mind. And taming the mind is the first thing I believe that we need to do. And once we do that, we can cultivate virtue. And I've often used the image of growing a garden. So we plant the seeds that we want and care for them in the way that's needed to grow those positive virtues. But we also have to remove the weeds and those things that obstruct the crop that we want to grow, and that interfere or obstruct it. So that is the point of Vipassana, the insight to be able to discriminate in that way. Yeah, we have to have, very important to have a tranquil, stable, open state of mind, that we can maintain a tranquil and open state of mind, even in the midst of all the external chaos and disturbances, to be the center of the cyclone and the center of the hurricane. Yeah, that is why we tame our minds, because our minds are continually being disturbed by this, that, and the next thing, irritated. And so once we see that, everything is grist for the mill, so it's not difficult to be overwhelmed by anger and behaving just like, our knee-jerk response if someone challenges us or treats us badly. It's not easy to remain calm and tranquil and composed in such a situation. That is very sane and beneficial for us to do so nonetheless, but it takes practice. And as we know, anger and aggression is the worst of the emotions in terms of destroying our merit, and we can really go down that rabbit hole in a hurry. So we don't want to be easily disturbed by the ups and downs that are bound to happen. At work, at home, family, all these things happen, and we just take them in stride. It's not, again, what happens externally, it's what we do with those things, how we approach them, how we use whatever comes our way.
And Jungin Rinpoche talked about using whatever negative feelings we have as fuel for the fire.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned it to me when I've had difficulty with someone, to make them my practice.
Yeah. So it's our choice. We have it. I mean, people say, "Oh, it's my habit." Well, once we see it as such, then it is a choice. When people say, "Oh, I don't want to smoke," for example, well, that is a choice. They say they don't want to smoke, but when they light that up at that point, it's a choice they make. So in that situation, we have a choice.
Lama, there's a monk that I am social media friends with, who I probably have mentioned with you before. who again sent me a very series of long messages the last several days. And I've tried, well, this is what the teachings say, reflect on this, don't get hung up on this one thing, think about this. And it just, I'm not able to reach him. And there was even some gaslighting that he understood my point of view, but I could never understand his point of view. And I just kind of just stopped responding. And then I just typed back that I don't have to agree with you to have compassion for you. So I'm just going to leave it that I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't think what you're doing is correct. I don't think your mindset is where it needs to be, but I still have a lamp for you on my shrine.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. He's a monk.
Yeah.
Well, as a monk, to a monk, it's good to have the conversation, and it's good to state your position about it and to try to help. He may or may not listen, but it doesn't really matter. But it is, it's fine to, without attachment. You're not, trying to control them in any way. But if you can, speak in alignment with your own Buddha nature, that would be fine. Anytime we have suffering, we're not in alignment with our own Buddha nature. And that's true mentally, it's true physically. Anytime we have pain, it's because we're out of alignment with who we are, with our Buddha nature. And so we're in contradiction, and that contradiction inevitably will cause suffering. Monk or layperson, it doesn't really matter. But we want to be in harmony as much as possible and speak as eloquently about that harmony and order as we can, without expectation. That's just come from your heart, in alignment as much as you can, without expectation. And you're not trying to win an argument. It is just the natural expression of being in alignment with who you are, and hopefully with the teachings. And he will hear based on his own causes and conditions. But when you interact with him, it's without expectation.
Now, I guess it's ego driven, or they say it's a male thing that you want to fix the problem. That's here, do this and this will fix what's going on. And
we don't. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
We can't fix somebody else's neuroses.
No, that is up to them. And we don't know why they have that, but it is a process that is ultimately going to lead them to enlightenment as well. Sooner or later, they will see the truth. And you just, if you can shorten their suffering or shorten their short-sightedness, great. But they may have that for a reason. They have something to learn, and so we have to honor that in that individual. It's not that we want to change them. We want to wake them up from the dream, and if you can help do that by talking like that, that's great. But they are holding on to a particular belief system for a reason. It's doing them some good. And until they see it for what it is, and then they'll be able to let go of it. But until then, it serves a purpose, whether it's aggrandizing their own ego or it's serving a purpose, that belief system. But ultimately, we've got to let go of all those structures.
Karma Jumps, I just caught a lizard while you were talking. That is good advice, whether it's dealing with spiritual friends or just lay
all beings, they have their own path to take, and we be as congruent as we can. But the more aligned that you can be, again, with the truth, that's great. But and to see how those things, sometimes they're just like we are, and we don't. Our buttons get pushed because just like we are, and we don't like that. Or, it triggers something in us, some negative emotion. So we really have to watch out for that one. And that is grist for our mill. Why are we responding to them in such a way that it's irritating? That should not be the case necessarily, that we're irritated by the actions of another, but we would correct it if possible because we know they're suffering, just like you were saying before about you don't want a person to suffer. So it's our bodhisattva attitude that we wish to correct wrong thinking or, wrong views because it's creating suffering. They may not even see it, but if you can wake them up, great. But there's, again, no expectation. They have their own path and they're choosing this for a reason. And that's allow them to have their path.
It's like whether that drop in the pool is the one that affects them in this lifetime or several lifetimes from now. We don't know.
That's right.
It's the way you talk about that idea of wanting to fix people. That is something that I've struggled to try and let go of because it's difficult. I don't know if it's the New Yorker in me or where this idea that I've got to solve the problem. I can't remember who said it, but one of the lamas has said, well, yeah, but if you solve their problem, you don't let them gain the merit of solving their problem.
That's right. And that's the important thing. If you can give it to them in a way that they see the light of truth in that, then that's real change. But you can't force that. There's something that's pushing them from the past, and until they see it and awaken to it, just like the analogy of carrying a lamp into a dark room. It doesn't matter how long it's been dark, you bring the light in and people see, but you can bring the light in, but there may be still a difficulty in themselves seeing the truth.
Sunglasses.
Yeah.
I guess my experience with this has been a little frustrating because this person's been a Dharma practitioner longer than I have. Has been a monk a little bit longer than I have. And it just seems like we have completely different perspectives on our centers. The center he had attended for a long time, which he no longer will go to, is Tongu's Center in Vancouver. And, has gone on about how unhappy and what a bad place it is. And I had no perspective of how to deal with that because I look at my perspective of being a KTD and it's completely different. I mean, I've never had anyone pass me by and not put down an offering envelope because I'm Western. I've never had anyone look at, how colorful my arms are and decide that I'm not worthy of an envelope. All these sort of things that I hear complaints of, that's never happened to me.
You say he's been a practitioner for a long time. You don't know his mind. You don't know what kind of practitioner he is. I mean, you can say words, you can say prayers, you can do practices, but that doesn't mean you're a practitioner. It doesn't mean that you have that bodhicitta. It doesn't mean that you have an understanding of what you're even doing. You can be a practitioner for many, many years, unfortunately, and not reap the benefits of it. There's some belief, particularly if he's saying that he won't go back to Trungpa Monastery because of this, that, or the next thing. That's a pretty strong belief. And he wouldn't see it that way probably, but there is a certain structure that he has created for himself that is obviously another form of suffering. that is not being congruent with the nature of reality, which it's neutral, but we're placing some kind of aspect on it in relationship to our belief, or it serves us to think that.
It was in, or if it's one of the books that we read recently, that everybody has their own window that they're looking out of.
That's right.
That's their view of the world. And since I can't look through their window.
That's right.
I guess that's where I'm at with this. Kempo David Chopel has dealt with this individual as well. Kempo David and I talked about him during our mealtime at KTD during one month. And he even said that, well, this person has stopped writing me, and I'm not sure I'm unhappy about that.
Yeah, you can only do so much. Again, if the Buddha could change our minds would be changed, but no one can do it for you. This is this is part of our practice, as a part of our development. Some of us have some very deep-seated kleshas, and we have to have loving kindness and compassion. We're not trying to force anybody to be any way. And the more you do that, the more frustration you may feel yourself if you're trying to fix it. That person has got to be open and receptive to that idea, and pushing is a little aggressive, it's and it doesn't really help. You have to have some skillful means to reach that person. Loving kindness is probably the best way to demonstrate that, and not be harsh or forceful, or trying to fix it. That is, I would really look at that attitude for sure.
Yeah, I know I fail at wrathful speech, wrathful compassion. It just never, I'm just not skilled in that at all. So I try to avoid it at all costs.
Well, use compassion. It doesn't have to be wrathful. You can do it in a number of ways. So that may not be skillful for you, so best not to do it that way. Maybe loving kindness is better. Maybe patience. And forbearance. Yeah. Allowing them to have their own path. Sometimes not reacting is the best way to do it. And then they hear themselves, again, sometimes when we say something, it just reinforces them, or it's like just creates more resistance. This particular idea that they have just gets more crystallized, defending their point of view. So you don't want to come in that direction in that way, to have them have to defend themselves, or they're wrong. It's not a matter of that.
Thank you, Lama. That has been tremendous benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to look at our own nature and what it, how we are in that relationship with them. I'd say err on the side of loving kindness and compassion and forbearance for their attitude, and but you don't have to cut them off either. If you've taken bodhisattva vows, you don't leave anybody behind, but nor do you need to have them be a certain kind of way.
I was talking with someone else about their issues with the relationship, and he's a Buddhist, and he was like, well, Bodhisattva, I have to keep helping this person. I said, well, you also have to have healthy boundaries. There comes a point where you can help them, but you can help them from a distance.
Well, whatever your capacity is, yeah, you don't have to gouge out an eye if they want it. Some bodhisattvas have done that, but it's whatever our capacity is for that. But if you find yourself getting upset, you've exceeded your capacity.
That's a very good point, Lama. I feel like that's always the crux there when we're trying to help people that are, very high needs emotionally.
Mhm.
We tend to wanting to help, but not realize that
You can say I tend.
yeah, I tend, I tend to want to help and not realize that I'm not really helping it in a longer run period, and I'm getting sucked in
Yeah,
into
so
more.
you need to have that awareness. I'm getting sucked in here. Look at my emotions. How is this helping? And so, yeah, so that is part of mindfulness.
Yep.
Yeah, it is very subtle how we get caught, the thought or the emotion does come to mind, and you have to respond by returning your attention to your own mind stream and what's going on there and what is it that has triggered or a particular response of impatience or anger or frustration. That is totally optional. But it's good practice. That is part of the practice. Our monkey mind will calm down a little bit. We can breathe. We can become more settled in the present moment, undistracted, by any of the things that are going on or the emotions that are passing through the mind. And this is the goal, of meditation. And it's in every moment. It's not just on the cushion. So this is all, really important, to practice in these kind of situations. Yeah, these are examples of how we can be more mindful, engaged with people who are not so easy to be with sometimes, but great, bring it on.
It's interesting you say that, and I think, if when you've been in an abusive relationship and you've gained some space from it, or should I say have developed a little bit of wisdom to understand why you were in that relationship to begin with. I feel like my spidey senses are better now than they were, but I cannot say that I am far along enough in my bodhisattva practice that I invite those in that I feel could cause me difficulty.
Yeah, well, those are the things that are going to enhance your bodhisattva attitude. So
Yes.
that's wonderful. So for many, accomplishing shamatha is rare, and one of the very common problems, is that people try too hard, and then they get down on themselves. Or as Westerners, we can learn a lot from relaxing a bit more deeply and letting the stability of our mind arise naturally from relaxation, and just breathe, be present, and observe the situation, and you can return to a nice, serene, calm mind, that's spacious and accepting, without having to make it a particular kind of way. That's a good start. But it does take energy, to be mindful like that. We have to be stable. We've got to be steady. Like a mountain, unmoving, but very present in the moment with that individual or whatever that situation is. So you get to watch your mind. And by doing that, that's practicing meditation. You get used to remaining present, undisturbed by whatever thoughts or emotions arise in your mind. You see them with a certain detachment. And that's just like we say, our mind usually behaves like an excited monkey, jumping from place to place, thing to thing we like, thing we don't like. And but this situation that we're talking about, this is inevitable. And so this is practice. It's more important to be able to be stable in that situation than it is on the cushion by yourself. This is engaged bodhisattva action. So whatever arises in the mind, we see with equanimity. We don't have to change it. That is, just be present. That's equanimity. That helps to make the mind more pliable, more workable. So when those negative things come up and we get frustrated and we're ready to turn and run, we don't want any more of this. Those negative thoughts and emotions begin to hold less and less control over us. And then we can be of real value in that situation. Just like you were saying, John, so the Kempo, David, was saying that he also was dealing with this individual, and he didn't want anything to do with him either. So he probably gets a lot of that, this particular person. So handling this in a different kind of way could be very helpful to him, without judgment, without running away, without criticism, without any that trying to fix it. So the real fruit of meditation practice is that our mind becomes more and more flexible and in the present and less a prisoner of our negative habitual patterns. And that would be a negative habitual patterns. It's our kind of default position. And we're able to place our attention where we want it, and the thoughts and the emotions will still arise, but they won't distract us or impede us or direct us. We can choose to follow thoughts if it suits our needs, but we are no longer blown about again like a leaf in the wind. This is really important. That's the practice of engaged bodhisattva activity. Our mind is clear, and we can experience that state of stability and tranquility. That no matter where we are, what happens, there's a sense of harmony and balance in our lives, and we are successful and things are going wonderfully for us. We're not overly carried away by this and that. There will always be difficulties and failures, which can happen to anyone, but we are not completely overwhelmed and depressed by them either. Or that we're better than them. There's that too. Oh, why can't they see it the way I do? They've been a meditator for a long time. How come they haven't gotten it? That's a judgment. And it certainly can be in a family, in a working situation. It's very important to have that tranquil, stable, open state of mind, and that we can remain or maintain a tranquil, open state of mind, even in the midst of external chaos and disturbances. We're taming our mind. In our families, in our workplace, in the world, people becoming disturbed, irritated, we can remain stable. I know it sounds like an impossibility, but it's not. That's our natural state. But our kleshas, our tendencies, our habits, so to speak. And again, these tendencies and habits are generally choices that we make, and we can make other choices that are more skillful. And it helps the other person because we have not stimulated further anger or resentment. That is also part of the bodhisattva attitude. We don't want to create that kind of aggression or the sadness or grief or judgment that makes them sad or upset. That is actually a violation of the bodhisattva vow. So we've got to be peaceful ourselves before, we can make a contribution to the peace of the world. But we can, but it certainly starts with ourselves. Simply talking about peace in the world has never resulted in peace. Peace comes about by example. We must become models of that peace by practicing it, not merely by our speech. It is by example in our body, our speech, our mind. Any other questions or comments? Maybe we'll stop here, maybe a little bit early if there's no other questions. Or
Nothing from here. Logan, did you have anything?
No, but thank you for the talk tonight. It really, really hit home. Bad enough that one. I'm a caseworker for Children's Services in Ohio, so kind of your whole talk kind of touched on everything and how I've been feeling about the job recently. So, thank you.
yes. Yeah, you come across a lot of people who are unskillful in actions, and you have the opportunity, to practice Dharma in your work. There's no question about that, and it's probably more important that you bring that awareness to your job than it is to sitting on the cushion and doing shamatha or taming the mind in that way, because that is really this is the way we ultimately eliminate our negative habitual patterns and kleshas, by seeing them as they arise in this way.
The Dharma has definitely made me better at my job, because I didn't take my practice seriously till probably almost a year into my job, and that's when I finally started taking it serious, and I've noticed a big change, and it's definitely helped.
Good for you. And yes, and give yourself credit for that. So that is the result of Dharma practice, and good that you see it. And that's the result of practice. More to come. So very good. Continue to do that. So always try to listen to the Dharma when you have the opportunity. And it's not to say we don't do our practice on the cushion and do those kinds of things, but in real life, we have lots of opportunities that can be really strong for us. And that is good. And just like you say, your work is a great benefit for you in the practice of Dharma. So you're fortunate. All right, so we can dedicate the merit if you like.
Wonderful, Lama.
All right. So, at the end of your practice, always dedicate the merit. We dedicate this merit. May all sentient beings be happy. May the lower realms be forever empty. May the prayers of all bodhisattvas abiding in any of the levels be fulfilled. May warfare, sickness, famine be pacified. And Karmapa, may your teachings, this heart of the Dharma, auspiciously ever flourish. May it bring good fortune, happiness, and peace. May pure conduct, merit, wealth, and prosperity increase. And may supreme good fortune and well-being continually arise in our minds. We dedicate this merit completely. Okay, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time. If you would, please bring this up for me, Mike, about Lama Karma. He's fine with doing this. I talked to him first before I suggested it to you, because I wanted to see if he was receptive to it, and he is. He said he'd be fine with it.